Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Summer Rewind annual event here at Warrior Words. And this week, I am re-airing a conversation I had with Andy Campbell. And I mentioned it, I think, in my conclusion of the original episode, but I went in to this conversation expecting to talk about cancer. Being a cancer survivor myself, I just thought, there would be some common ground and we would just talk about his cancer experience. And we did. And so please make sure you listen to that because it is nothing short of miraculous. Um, but as you will also hear, there's a long list of things that Andy has walked through in his life. And I think what ended up unfolding was an honest conversation with no pre-planning. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but what I approach my podcast episodes a little differently in that I don't have set questions specific to each person when I start out. And this one just unfolded like a wonderful conversation between two people who have a background in faith, who experienced cancer, but who also walked through many other storms. And I think it's a beautiful conversation. So with that, I don't think there's anything else to say except for let's rock. Are you walking through a storm that feels like it will never end? Do you wonder if life's storms have stolen the beauty from your life for good? You're in the right place. My name is Heather, and like you, I've been through a storm or two and wondered if life would ever be beautiful again. Here we share warriors' words, stories of discovering beauty after battles, and the worth in your wounds. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome, warriors. Andy Campbell is a resilient survivor and an inspirational author who has overcome numerous life-altering challenges. A victim of childhood sexual abuse and bullying, the loss of his mother at an early age, and the eventual estrangement of his father, his battle with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the loss of his youngest son to suicide. Despite enduring multiple surgeries, grueling chemotherapy treatments, and the tragic loss of his youngest child, he has demonstrated remarkable strength and perseverance and developed a deep understanding of resilience, knowing firsthand what it takes to overcome monumental challenges. Andy lives with his wife and remains actively engaged in the lives of his 3 remaining adult children as he continues to support his family while managing his own health challenges. Now, before we hear from Andy, did you know that I have created some Warrior Words t-shirts and hats and there's stickers and water bottles, all that fun stuff. And you can find that at Fourth Wall. And I'll put the link to Fourth Wall in the description because it's kind of a long link. But you can now wear your warrior wings or carry your warrior sword with you wherever you go. And if you do pick something up, post it on Instagram and tag me at my warrior words. Now, grab a tissue and join Andy and me as we talk about a variety of traumas and the impact listening and forgiveness have on survival. Let's rock. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We are blessed to have Andy Campbell here with us today. Welcome to Warrior Words, Andy. How are you today?
Hi, Heather. I'm doing well. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Well, I welcome this conversation, and as you and I spoke before hitting record, we did take a long way to kind of get here, and I am so grateful that the moment is finally here to have our conversation.
Yeah, feel
So.
the same way. It has worked out as it should have worked out.
Exactly. I believe the same thing. So I was looking at your bio and I've also looked at your website in preparation for our conversation, and you've been through quite a bit. And I already read some of that in the bio, but could you give us just a brief intro to who Andy is and kind of how you got here today?
Yeah, I have I have survived um, having verbally abusive childhood relationships. I have survived childhood sexual abuse, the loss of my mother, watching her die over 11 years in her struggle with cancer from the time I was 11 to 22. My father is disabled, and after my mother passed away, he was not really able to cope with that, so we ended up being estranged. I have four children, three still living. When I was 53, I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. That was almost 7 years ago. The prognosis was about 6 months, but I have outlived my prognosis.
Praise
And
God.
about 2.5 years into my cancer treatment, my youngest son, Heston, took his own life.
Mm, that is quite a list.
That's part of the list. I've left
That's
off a lot of things. I've left off a lot of stuff, but those are some of the, I guess you could say, highlights.
the
But
highlights.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. This kind of sounds a lot more like lowlights. However, I do know that, some good things have come from these lowlights, highlights. And if we could start with the cancer, the pancreatic cancer in 2018, you said you were given a prognosis of 6 months. So if we do the math, you've outlived it by a long shot because that's more than
yeah,
7 years.
yeah. Right. Coming up August will be 7 years. Yeah. So it's yeah. I think the challenge with life is that it is, and
Yeah.
my wife and I were talking about this a while back, and I said, I think when they do the marriage vows, they don't put enough emphasis. All the emphasis is on for better. They never
Mm,
really put a lot of emphasis on the worse, for better or worse. And I'm like, it should be for better and worse, because there's not really an
mm,
or. Like it's going to be an and. Like
right.
these things are going to happen to us all, and they happen. And when it happens to you, it's not like, oh, I mean, I like to think, because it helps me deal with things, and I believe this is true, it can always be worse. Okay. It can always
Right.
be worse.
Right.
And I look at people who I look at that have had challenges, and I'm like, man, I just don't know if I could have survived that. Right. And they would look at me and say, I don't know how you survived that. And I'm like, well, I think it just goes that the world is flawed, it is broken, and we're going to have difficulties in this life, setbacks, uh, traumatic events that we have to endure. But and each one that we endure is unique to us. So we shouldn't compare them in the sense of like, oh, well, mine's not as important as that other one that somebody else has.
Right.
Whatever one has had happen to them, it was uniquely kind of tuned to them. So it is as bad as anything else that has happened to someone else, I think, right? Although I think
Yeah.
it helps me deal with things to kind of keep things in perspective. Uh, you know, Things could always be worse. But I think it is, my father used to say, my father was a deacon in a church, and until my mother died, I think it just really broke him. They were very, very close, and she really kind of tethered him to reality, like tethered him in, and he kind of, he had a really, really, really bad childhood, and then went to Vietnam. And what I'm saying is, I don't hold these things against him, right?
Right.
He's passed
Hmm.
away now. I don't hold animosity against him. He had a terrible, terrible struggle in life. But people would come to him, obviously in the church, and people would say, kind of like Job, like, well, what have you done to deserve this? And
Yeah.
he would say, I've done nothing to deserve this. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. And that has helped me keep in perspective that while it is for better and worse, um, everyone is going through something. You just don't know it because they rarely share it on Facebook, and they're certainly not putting it in their selfies,
Right.
and they're not showing their vacation and, wherever on Instagram. But behind the scenes, we are all going through our own world of pain.
I remember seeing you brought up the social media. I remember seeing a meme at one point where it's a shadowy figure. You can tell it's a human female, but that's all you can tell. And she's leaning, I think, up against a brick wall, and everything is dark. And the caption at the bottom is, "Don't judge, because you do not know what storm I've asked her to walk through."
Yeah, yeah. I think
And
yeah. It's 100% true. I heard. I don't listen to him often. I only say that because I don't really know a lot about his show, but Dave, Dennis Prager was on the radio. This is probably like 30 years ago, and he told a story about he went home one day, and he was complaining to his mother that everyone else seemed happy. Everyone else was happier than them. All these other families were happier. Why weren't they happy? And she said, Dennis, the only happy people I know are the people I don't know well. And I
wow,
thought that
yeah,
was, not to say that, but I get her point. It was like you just don't know them well enough to know the troubles they're going through. And
right.
so I think it matches up with the meme you saw, right? We don't know what someone else is going through, and we probably should show people a little more grace.
I agree. I agree. I think our world needs a lot more grace, a lot more compassion, understanding,
Yeah,
forgiveness. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, how much better would this world be if we looked at people with love and, instead of looking at them as categories or labels or whatever else we can come up with, whatever judgment we can come up with.
Yeah, I think,
So,
look, I mean, I think Christ gave us a number of aspirational goals. The creator of the universe set in place aspirational goals for us, and we just continually fall short of those. But it doesn't mean we should not strive for those.
correct.
And so I both agree with you. I agree with you, period. And I work to give myself a little forgiveness along the way when I do, I think what we all do, which is fall short.
Mhm. And I think sometimes that's the hardest. I think sometimes we are the hardest people we have to forgive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was forgiveness is one of those things, um, and Christ tells us to forgive, and 70 times seven, and he gives the instruction. Um, I was going through after my son's passing. I was going through this type of therapy. You may have heard of it. I had not heard of it until I did it, which was called EMDR,
Mhm.
um, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Something they developed for Vietnam veterans at the VA back in like the 70s. And I really felt like as I went through it, uh, I felt the prompting to do it. And it's one of those things where things just worked out in a way that I really believe like God had kind of moved the universe around, for me. Like it just kind of shifted things a little bit.
Yeah.
And I ended up finding this lady, my wife, my children, because the loss of a child to suicide, the loss of a child, in our case to suicide, um, that kind of pressure, that kind of event, it will find many cracks. It will find any weak spot in your person, right? In your soul. It will find those weak spots. And um, going through that, the process is basically that you have these events that happen in your life, and that neurologically, they go down a processing path, and the emotion of that initial event gets stuck. And so if you have anything similar that happens, your brain kind of processes it through this pathway, and you can have just these unintentional emotional reactions. It's kind of like you hear a song on the radio, you just start crying. You don't know why,
Mhm.
but you just start crying.
Right.
And so I think I realized going through that because I had always thought I had forgiven people, for things that had happened,
Mhm.
many things along the way, and I realized that it's really hard to forgive when that thing, that emotion of having been wronged or abused or whatever it is still attached to you, still attached to you. Because if somebody's punching you in the face, and every time they stop punching you in the face, you go, "Well, I forgive you," and then they punch you in the face again, and then you're like, "I
Mhm.
forgive you," and then they punch you in the face, like it keeps punching you in the face.
Right.
And it came to me during that process that nobody really tells you how to forgive somebody. They're just like, you should forgive, right? You should forgive. And I think part of it is during that process, praying for uh, the release of the emotion tied to things that had happened to me so that I could forgive. Like there's an intermediary step in that forgiveness thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about, uh, and I guess Christ had that, you know, he had that ability to just, uh, he didn't take personal the things that they did to him, or the things that happened to him. So that emotion wasn't attached to him. But I think as humans, it is kind of attached to us, whether it was an oncologist who didn't know what he didn't know what he was doing. And things could have gone much, much different than they are today,
Mhm.
and you kind of attach that anger or whatever it is to that. It's kind of hard to forgive him until you can kind of separate yourself from that emotion. And I thank God that he helped me find a way. I would encourage listeners to seek first to relieve themselves of the pain, and then forgiveness, I think, can come and backfill what was once there. Like when the space is empty from the pain and the anger and the frustration and all those things, then I think forgiveness can backfill that space. So I don't know how I got off on that. We were talking about forgiveness, so I apologize. I told you I would ramble during this conversation.
Well, no, but I find it interesting because I don't think that a lot of us focus on that emotion. It
Yeah,
is. The more, as I sat here and listened to you and thought about it as you were saying it, yeah, if you're tied to anger or hatred or even, just sorrow and sadness, it's very difficult to say
I
I
couldn't do it.
yeah. I mean,
You
yeah,
say
how can
it's
you?
difficult, but I mean, there may be people who can do it, but and I thought I had. Like that's the thing. Like I thought I had, and then these events happen, they find that weak spot, and you're like, this lady explained to me. I remember her telling me that she goes, because she went through like 3 pages of stuff. That's never good when they keep turning the legal pad, um, and she said, "Look, I think it'll take us, normally like 8 sessions to do this. I'm not a big talk therapy person because like I like to do something and then like do something and then finish and move on to the next thing.
Right, right.
I don't want to sit around and talk about how bad things are forever. Um, but she said, for you, I think it's going to be closer to 20 hours. Okay, like we're going to put a little time to it." And she explained to me what it was, and I was like, "I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Like I'm not digging up this stuff. I'm not dealing with that." And what she was trying to explain to me was like I needed to release some of these things so that I could find forgiveness in some of these areas. I could experience um, forgiving someone. And she, she said, she goes, Andy, look, here's how this works. You don't actually have it all put away. And you know that. That's why you're avoiding dealing with it. It's not put away. It's not dealt with. You just got it
Yes.
suppressed. You're just pushing it down and you think it's good, but the reason you're here is because it's not good. And she goes, so here's the decision you have to make. We can spend one day. She goes, because if we do 24 1 hour sessions, that's one day. That's all.
Right.
One
Hmm.
day.
One day.
And you can experience these things again one more time for one day, or you can experience them every moment of every day for the rest of your life. And I was like, well, that's not a very nice thing to say because I thought I'd gotten myself out of this. Um, but I hadn't gotten myself out of it because that made a lot of sense to me. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and through that process, I realized like all of a sudden I was able, I was like, it almost was like forgiveness wasn't even, it was like it just kind of, it backfilled that empty space that, as the emotion went away, as the anger, as the frustration, as the desire for retribution, like all these things that, first of all, I thought I didn't feel. I didn't think they were there,
Right.
and
Yeah.
if I did think they were there, I kept them tucked away so they didn't impact my life, certainly not that. But it was after that, it was like it almost kind of happened in that way. It's like the anger went away, and without even trying, like the forgiveness just kind of backfilled it. It was really interesting. It was a very interesting thing to observe. It was nice that it happened, but it was interesting, you know, to observe that there is like this. It's just nobody tells you that. Like I wish somebody had just said, "Okay, here's what you do. You're really angry about what happened to you as a child, or you're really angry at the oncologist for having done this thing, or I had a back surgery. It was just a complete mess. And like you're really angry. Wish somebody just said, if you do this thing and and you work on getting really angry, like it'll just happen. That tells you that.
No, they don't. Not until you're sitting in a therapist chair.
Yeah. Yeah. And somebody goes, hey,
No.
this is kind of how it works. I'm like, I wish
Yeah.
somebody had written that on the whiteboard a while back. I would have used it.
But I'm glad she gave you that perspective because yes, when you sit there and you're expecting 8 hours and she says, well, no, I think it's going to take 24. Well, 24 is three times what you're
Yeah.
expecting.
Yeah.
And then to put it in the perspective of, well, it's 24 hours. That's the equivalent of one day. And
Yeah.
we can put this to rest. If you
Yeah.
do the work and you are open, we can put this to rest. And then you see the results and the fruits of
Yeah.
that backfilling of removing the negative emotions and filling it in with the forgiveness and the compassion. And
Yeah.
like you said, you don't hold those things against your father that maybe the world says you should.
Yeah. Or
Um,
that I certainly did. All of a sudden you come up with a different perspective and it's like, well, the truth is he was never malicious. He just had a really, really difficult life and things were not easy for him at all. And he was just doing the best he could. Like you start having those thoughts instead of like, why did he do that? Like, like you're angry. It's like he's doing the best he could. My
right.
parents were doing the best they could. I want to be clear because and I think I believe you will agree with this. If you don't, let's discuss it.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
I don't believe, and this is kind of a thin line, okay, because as a parent, I would certainly guide my children toward things. But I never had them fall off a bike and scrape their knees so I could teach them a lesson about how to apply a bandage. Okay. Those two things like I don't believe that God is a father. I don't think that's how it works.
No,
Because that's
I
not how we work, right? That's not how
right,
we
right.
work in things. And I think as above, so below, like we kind of unintentionally emulate, even if we don't, people don't see it or admit it, we kind of emulate that. So I look at like, so I don't think my personal perspective is that these things don't happen um, to make us stronger or fill in the gaps or I think what happens is the Creator is gracious enough that in this broken world, He will, in spite of your situation, He will help you with that, right? Like I think that's the perspective that I take on, like, because your problems will find every weak spot. And I think he's gracious enough to come back and kind of patch in those weak spots.
Yeah, right. I don't, I went through cancer myself, and I definitely do not believe that God gave me cancer to teach me the
Right,
lessons
right,
that I learned.
right,
Um, I believe I learned the lessons, you know, because of a good and gracious God, not
right.
because he gave me cancer.
That
You
is
know,
what I'm trying to say, right? Like
yeah.
I was because and where that was coming from, I was thinking this lady, I had to have been directed to her because she said many things like that no one else had ever said to me before. Like explain things the way she did.
Mhm.
And I think like the way she explained things just resonated with me. And so I was kind of directed there, but I don't believe any of those things happened. So I could go hear her tell me those things. I think I was just gracious enough to say, you're pursuing, not quitting. Throw you a bone on this thing and help you keep moving forward. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, not sure how we got there, but yeah.
Well, because I know that there is a lot of confusion on the topic of forgiveness. Um, it's not excusing the behavior. And it's actually not for the other person. It's more for us, like you said, to maybe break those emotional ties and to fill in some of those cracks that we have, that we personally have, and our weaknesses.
I I hope your listeners enjoy people agreeing because we agree. Even that never made sense to me. Like, forgiveness is for the person forgiving, not the person who's been forgiven. Like, that just didn't make any sense to me because surely they feel guilty about what they've done and they would like to have forgiveness. Maybe that's the case. But, what occurred to me during, kind of this time of dealing with, these emotions that are, and when I say emotions, I don't mean nice emotions, I mean
Right.
these things that hold on to you. Um, I so I don't excuse the behavior of the men and the people who sexually abused me as a child. I don't excuse my son taking his own life because I don't agree with that in the sense that,
Right.
but it finally kind of came to me why the forgiveness was for us, the person forgiving, was because the forgiveness is what backfills the negative emotion. And it's like until you release the negative emotion, it's actually part of you. Like you don't just get angry, you are angry. You didn't just get vengeful, you are vengeful. Like it becomes part. It just kind of finally came to me. It's like, God, that's why it's not about them. I'm not excusing something. I'm not accepting that behavior.
Right.
I'm saying that it doesn't matter what they did. I don't want to any longer have, kind of incarnate inside of me as part of my this body in which my soul resides. I don't want that anger to be a part of me. I don't want that negative thing to be a part of me. And so, like the forgiveness, I don't know. I think he was trying to explain it to us, and we're just kind of dense, and at least I'm kind of dense, and it just never made sense until some of these things occurred, and then it was like, oh, so he he's caring about me in this sense, not about what they've done. He's saying, I care about you, so I want you to let it go. right?
Yes,
Like that's powerful to me.
it is. It's very
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree. I'm dense too. I think a majority of us humans.
Well, it's funny. That's like that's like my first core belief. I don't know where, like ages ago, I wrote this one down. No one outruns the universe. And what that represented to me was never be so arrogant as to think you're smarter than the creator of the universe. Like there's nothing you're going to come across that hasn't, you're only thinking about it because you're in this universe and he created it. So you can't even think of something that he hasn't. Like you know, it's not like it's this
Yeah.
circular thing. It's like, so
Yeah.
just always remember you can't outrun the universe. So like if you have these events that have happened, don't think you can just push them down because God created the universe with certain, like to me, the universe is a set of guardrails, like, you talk about quantum physics and all this stuff, but it's kind of like, hey, stay in the middle of the road. And then you don't, you run into the guardrail and it's like, okay, we'll run into the guardrail and then come back to the center of the road. And then sometimes we don't, we just go through the guardrail and he's like, well, that's not a good thing to do.
No.
And it hurts, like it's
Yeah.
painful. And then sometimes people just come in, they crash into you and, hurt you. But we don't outrun the universe. Like we are part of the creation. We're not smarter than, we're not more than, we are uniquely made. We are incredibly valuable to this universe. I believe every human life is an invaluable thread in the fabric of the universe. Um, but we are not it.
Right.
And so, it's just like, that's kind of the thing. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm dense. I got it. I didn't get it when you said it the first 50 times, I didn't understand it, but I got it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it
Yeah.
now. This time I think I got it.
Until we hit the guardrail again.
Yeah, until we hit the guardrail. It happens,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
happens. And so,
Well, I
um,
used to say that God needs to give me either a neon sign or hit me on the head with a 2x4. And I
yeah,
think both have happened on occasion.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
been hit with that 2x4 and it's not comfortable.
no.
Um, but then there are other times when it's more like that still small voice.
See, you just touched on, so I apologize. I'm not trying to go down the path of these core beliefs, but I will say, because one of the things I learned going through cancer, so I'd done 15 rounds of chemotherapy. At the 12th round, I started having really bad reactions. I've been kind of able to hold it together for 12 rounds, but I started having like this, I guess they call it a vascular reaction. So like my heartbeat was fine and my temperature was fine, but I would just turn red. It felt like my veins were on fire, right? Like I would
Okay.
start sweating and, you know, it was not pleasant. And but it was kind of bad the first time, but then I got three more rounds and I got to 15, and uh, and I had this realization that it came to me afterwards, but in that moment I kept having this still small voice that kept saying, "It's time to quit chemotherapy." Like, because I found out later you were only supposed to do 8 of these before they moved you on to a different drug. My oncologist didn't know that. But I did 15. And and I knew it was, it's funny that you like baseball, so this will make sense. I say this to some people and they're like, I don't get it. But I felt like after the 15th round, I felt like my organs, I feel like on the inside, I was like a baseball where the strings come apart and the leather starts to pull off, like it starts to
Mm,
separate from the core.
right.
And I thought, man, I'm just going to bleed out one day. Like I'm literally just going to be walking up the steps to walk in the front door. I'm just going to I could just kind of visualize like it was just coming apart at the seams.
Mhm.
And this little voice kept saying, it's time to stop. Now, on the other hand, there was this really loud voice, and it was saying, are you crazy? Like, the tumors are shrinking. It might be killing you faster than it's killing the cancer, but it's shrinking. And if you stop now, then you're going to have, maybe a year. Maybe you've stretched it out from this point. You're going to get a year, but those last few months are going to be a really painful way to go. And you saw your mother go through this, and man, you're gonna this is not going to be pretty. And then that's what you're going to leave your children seeing. And you're going to leave your children, but they're going to see you die of this horrible death. And then your wife's going to have to go through this. And you need to keep going. And but this little voice kept saying, it's time to stop. It's time to stop. And when you stop chemo and there are no other treatments at that time, I didn't know. I mean, I'd been to MD Anderson, I'd been, around, and there were no other treatments, 7 years ago for stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They threw this 3-day chemotherapy at it. You went in one day, you did 2 of the 3 chemo drugs. They put all the stuff around it so that it doesn't kill you then. And then they hook your port up to a pump and you go home, and for 42 or 44 hours, something like that, it pumps every 3 minutes. It pumps the last drug into you because it's so toxic they can't give it to you at one time. They have to give it to you over 2 days. And they send you home with a hazmat bag because if it
Wow.
spills out, you got to call the fire department. And I was like, hang on a
Oh,
second.
wait a minute. You're putting this in my body.
I just, who am I to question you? But I got one. Okay. I
Yeah.
got one question. Like, if it spills out, it's a problem. But if it stays in, it's not a problem. And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's call the fire department if it could. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
But you don't have any options, right? So
Right.
you do what you got to do. But I got to this 15th one, little, still small voice, but this very soft voice is like, time to quit. And I had a list of reasons not to quit. And they were, in my mind, certainties, these things will occur.
Mhm.
Um, but after that, my general physician, my family physician, who really quarterbacked the guy, and still is, quarterbacked me through this whole thing. He tried, he was like, no, I don't know it. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm stopping. I've decided. Like at some point, I decided to listen to I mean, I was coming apart like a baseball, like I could feel it. So
Mhm.
I tell him, I was like, hey, I'm gonna stop because I tell you what, I've been researching this. He's like this insatiably curious. He's a real physician, not a doctor, right? He's a physician,
Mhm. Yeah.
and he goes, I've been studying this. I've been reading all the research. Comes out of University of California Medical Center at San Francisco. They've done all this research on fasting before you do chemotherapy and the effects of fasting. And there's this place in California that'll do this 40-day fast. But I want to try. Let's do a 20-day water only fast. There's a lot of data that says it'll just reset your entire immune system. And I was like, stop. I thought did you just say 20 days? And he's like, yeah, yeah. And I was like, look, I don't know if you ever read the New Testament, but even when they go out in the desert, they have milk and locusts. Okay. Like not just water and black coffee. All right. So, like, what exactly are we? And so I was like, I'm not doing it. He said, no, no, just listen to me. Just think about it. So he actually talked me into doing it. Well, he didn't talk me into doing it. I mean, I was kind of out of options, and he was like, "Hey, we can do this. Let's just try." So every other day, I would go into the doctor's office. I would go in. They do blood work. They do all these tests, because they got to track you. It'd been 15 rounds
Mhm.
of chemo, and now at 10,
Yeah.
I made it to 10 days. 10 days, water only, black coffee, no calories at all for 10 days. I came out of that with a couple really strange, uh, uh, palate changes. I went from not liking really particularly carrying milk chocolate and hating dark chocolate to only eating dark chocolate like 70% or better. It had to be that. I've got like stacks of bars over here. You can't see them. And I eat like a bar a day now. And I had to have one watermelon a day. It was the damnedest thing I'd ever seen. Like, who eats one watermelon a day? Well, I do. And so then he talked me into, so I got out of that, came back from the fast, and then he's like, hey, we should try one more round of chemo and we'll fast for 5 days this time and then do the chemo because that's the research at the University of California is that you might not have the same side effects. So I did a 5-day water only fast and then did chemotherapy, still had the same or worse side effects. I was kind of too far gone at that point. Like
Mhm.
it becomes so toxic.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, I'm done. In that time frame, my oldest daughter, who is now a physician herself, but at that time, she because I have a genetic mutation that my mother and all 3 of her sisters had. My grandmother on her side, my 3 aunts, and my mother all died from breast cancer. I have the same genetic mutation, a BRCA1 mutation, BRCA1. And so my oldest daughter got tested. She has it, and so she was looking into this genetic counseling stuff, and she ended up finding uh, a trial at the University of Pennsylvania. Uh, And it was for people with a BRCA mutation who pancreatic cancer with a BRCA mutation who'd been on chemotherapy and had a good response from the chemotherapy. The tumors had shrank and hadn't tried any other trials. And so, like, I was like, that's me. But I was too exhausted by that point. So I was like, I don't even care. But my wife got me into it. So my daughter found it. My wife gets me into it. The first person she talked to said, no, he's not a good candidate. We've already closed the trial. We're not doing it. She talked to somebody else. She wouldn't give up. I wanted her to give up. I was like, just leave it alone. She said, in not as nice a way as I'm saying it now, get out of the room. You're not a part of this. Just go away. And so I did because I was exhausted at that point. I just looked, whatever. And they were like, no, he's a perfect candidate. Can you have him here Monday? That was on like a Tuesday. Like, can you fly out Monday? We'll then take him on Monday. And so I did. And like things, my point in that story is that like there's that still small voice that speaks to us. And then there's this really loud voice. And the loud voice is usually, unless there happens to be a lion or a tiger very nearby, right? Like in that case, listen to the loud voice. But other than that, like this loud voice was telling me all the things that were going to go wrong, telling me everything that was going to go wrong. And because I hadn't experienced the next 90 days yet, which I went from out of options over 90 days to in a trial, and I'm still alive. I did, went like, and the oncologist there is another true physician. She's a wonderful human being. And, and so like, I could not see what was going to happen over those 90 days.
Right.
Like it had not happened to me yet. I had no frame of reference. So how could I factor that into the things that would happen to me? Right? Like in my list of things, the possibilities was not, oh, you'll do this 10-day water only fast and that'll reset your immune system. Then you do another 5-day water only fast. Then that'll give your daughter time to find this other thing. And then that'll give you time to finish your chemotherapy and really be done with it. So you're absolutely certain. And then that will give your wife time to get you into it when they first deny you, but then she'll stay on it. She'll get you in. So 90 days from now, like it's all going to be good. Okay. None of that was in this. So
Right.
later I observed, and it became one of my core beliefs, there are no hard decisions. There are only hard consequences. And what we do as humans, we take the perceived consequences, which is almost never positive. Like, I don't know, maybe some people think of positive consequences. I'm kind of a risk manager. And so I tend to think of the negative things that could possibly happen.
Yes. Yeah.
But it was a lesson to me to listen to the still small voice. You know what the right decision is. So the decision is actually not a hard decision. Like you would say, like, well, deciding to quit chemo, that's a hard decision. Well, it wasn't a hard decision. It was the hard consequences that I perceived were most likely to occur. I took the consequences, the weight of the consequence, I picked them up and I put them on top of the decision, and then said the decision is hard. But I
Yes.
felt like it was kind of revealed to me, like in that process, it was like, Andy, it wasn't, you know, adopt this belief. It was not a hard decision. If you listen, if you get quiet and listen to me, I will tell you what you should do. And you will have to counter that very loud voice.
Right.
And so you'll have to get accustomed to not listening to that, unless, of course, you happen to be in the African plains and there's a lion, then,
There's-
like, listen to that. But
Yes.
generally speaking. So when you brought up the still small voice, I know that's a long way of telling the story, but it just kind of like it's just super important, I think, through whatever we're going through, the loss, in our case of a child, the cancer, or any other thing that someone's going through, the loss of a job.
Right.
Um, but I thought that's kind of how maybe that's kind of like a metaphor for how God tries to talk to us, right? How the Holy Spirit tries to talk to us, because what he's saying is like, if you'll get, I'm not raising my voice. I'm not raising my voice, you know? And, but that thing that is raising its voice, that's probably chaotic. You probably shouldn't listen to that one, you know? There really aren't any hard decisions. There are just consequences that probably aren't even probable, the most probable outcomes. You don't know what the most probable outcome is. You just think you do. And even if it is what you think, have the courage to face that consequence, because if the still small voice is telling you what to do, that's the better option.
And that was that right there. That was beautifully said. Have the courage to
Yeah.
face. Yes, that was a perfect end to that story. And you apologized a few minutes ago about bringing up your core beliefs, but I believe that you have several of them that kind of came out of this journey of various experiences in your life. And you wrote I believe you wrote a book with these core values or around
Yeah.
these core values. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. My physician and a couple of people said, "Hey, you survived cancer. You know, you should write a book, and you've had these other things happen. You should write a book." And I didn't really want. I'm not a writer, so I didn't want to write a book. I talked to my physician, and I had this benefit where I could take a leave of absence. So I took a leave of absence, and after about, you go through like a period of time where you're like, I don't even know why I did this. There's nothing wrong with me. And then, after all the things I see, I'd worked all the way through the cancer. I'd worked through my son's suicide. And then I got to a point where I was just exhausted, like it all caught up with me because no one outruns the universe. And it caught up
Yes.
with me. And so I slept for like 3 weeks. And then at some point I woke up and I got bored. Like I couldn't really go back to work yet, but I didn't have anything to do. During that time, I thought, well, I got nothing else to do. Maybe I just write down a few things, but I didn't want to write a book about cancer. I didn't want to write a book about, you know, sexual abuse. I didn't want to write a book about suicide. But I thought, well, you got this list of 15 core beliefs. Like I kept it on this document, like I'd refer back to it. I had it. And I was like, well, maybe what you could do is talk about those in the context of these things that have happened, these experiences, but focus on how these core beliefs have kind of, I think there's a time when an event, when a major negative event occurs, there's like that time between the time it punches you in the face, the time it happens, the time it just, you know, darkens your world, and the time that you can start a recovery, like, kind of start recovering yourself from this. I kind of softly call it a setback, overcoming life's toughest setbacks, but it's more than kind of setbacks, a nice way of saying it.
Right.
And but I thought, that maybe I could take those kind of core beliefs and write about how each one had kind of played a role in, getting through these different things and
Mhm.
how they had helped. And so that's kind of, one thing led to another, and over, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, it kind of came out. I got it done, put up on Amazon, and then I was like, I don't know what to do with it now. It was kind of cathartic. I got it out.
Mhm.
Um, and then eventually somebody said, why don't you do a podcast? And I was like, I'm not a writer. I don't do podcasts, like that. Um, but then I thought, well, things like this might be a way to kind of talk about some of the experiences, but not in the context of just the experiences, but then how the kind of principles or things that I believe I've observed that other people might be able to use so that they too will not quit, right? Like they get in. And so it kind of became this thing of the time between, like what are the things that kind of those fundamental beliefs that you can apply. We have our religious beliefs, we have our religious convictions, but what are the things in between, like the practical application of these teaching, the way I say the teaching, but the way that I observe kind of the universe working that helps us get from from that, like with my son, the moment I found his body to today, like, like what happens there, the moment you get the cancer diagnosis until you start the treatments and you start being able to get active and doing something. Like what do you do? And so that's how the book came about. It was, kind of was focused on sharing with people, not to be prescriptive, not to say I know how to do it,
Mhm.
but say these are some things that I've observed. Uh, Adopt them if you want to. If you do, adapt them to your unique situation. Like I don't believe there's like a prescriptive way it can happen, but maybe these are some ways to look at your circumstances that will encourage you not to quit.
So you can take those lessons that you learned and the core beliefs that you have seen in your own life, and then you can perhaps be that still small voice for someone else who may pick up your book and read it and apply it to their specific situation, which, as you said, it may be different than yours. They may be going through something completely different than what you experienced, but the lessons can apply.
Wow, like I'm just sitting here because I never thought of that before. But if by chance these words, uh, the Holy Spirit could use those words to be a still small voice when someone reads it, that would be a beautiful thing. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that. Yeah, that's I haven't had that thought before. Um, we were talking about before about how, when I decided to do this, I felt like, well, I'm not a writer, I'm not really a speaker, and then I thought back to Moses, and he's like, well, I kind of killed a guy and I got a stutter, and God's like, don't worry, I got it, just go do, I'll work it out.
Yep.
Um, Maybe that's what it is. Who knows? Maybe that's what it is. I like the way you phrase that. I'm going to hang on to that. I'm going to hang
Oh,
on to that.
oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I like to think that the Holy Spirit told me to say it. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
you know,
it's actually very uplifting to think that there would be that kind of use for it, right? That kind of use for it. Yeah.
well, you also reminded me then that, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And
Yeah.
so just like God called Moses, you know, your book can be that for somebody.
I hope it is. That would be a wonderful, I always say if just one person, if it helped one person not quit today, if it helped one person keep moving forward, then that would be worth kind of telling the stories, kind of reliving some of these things, right? To
Right.
to encourage someone else not to quit. Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly gonna put the Amazon link in the show notes, but where can somebody contact you to learn more about you and to learn more about the core beliefs and the book and
Yeah. The website is askandycampbell.com. And it's the reason it's named Ask Andy Campbell is not because I'm that arrogant. It's because when I didn't die immediately from pancreatic cancer, um, people would ask my doctor or some, people in a family, they're like, well, what did he do? And people would say, well, ask Andy what he did. I don't know, ask Andy. So I
ask
goes
Andy.
like, I just make it askandycampbell.com. That seemed like it was easy for me to remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can go there, askandycampbell.com, and you can uh, peruse the pages. And there's a form there to contact me, or you can sign up for. I send stuff out from time to time, email, just to hopefully kind of encourage people or either share some research that I've seen. But just it's really focused on just working to uh, share something that might speak to someone and help them in that moment. I've had a lot of those moments where you just need. I remember my doctor telling me, like right after I was diagnosed, my physician said I'd kind of like completely fallen apart, and he said, Andy, do not schedule your final vacation or do not quit your job. And I was like, why? You just told me I have pancreatic cancer. And he said, there's some new research out, and I think you have this genetic mutation, and I think we have a shot, at least a shot at not dying immediately. I think we have a shot. I can't tell you how long, but I think we have a shot. So sometimes you just need somebody to say, I think you got a shot at this. I think you got a shot at this. Don't give up today.
Don't give up. Yeah.
So yeah, so the book is kind of like, hey, don't schedule your final vacation yet. I should have made that like the thing is like overcoming life's toughest setbacks. Don't schedule your final vacation just yet.
Yes. Oh, well, I appreciate that. And I am, yeah, I'm definitely going to get those in the show notes and direct people to come ask Andy.
Yeah, there you go.
So the last question I like to ask everybody, and I think you may have already given us some, but if you have any last warrior words to that person who does feel like giving up, or the person who does feel defeated, or maybe the person who can't hear the still
Yeah,
small voice because the other voice is just too loud. What would you
yeah.
say? What would you say to that person?
I would say, look, don't quit. And the reason to not quit is do not take away from the creator his ability to change the universe for your benefit. Don't do that because all things are possible.
All things are possible. Yes, they are. And so, Andy, I thank you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your wisdom and your courage and for not giving up because they gave you a prognosis of 6 months and you're here
Yeah,
6.5 years later.
I am.
So
They were wrong.
they were, they were, they were
That was
wrong.
speaking of that vengeful part, that you hang on to, like I was like, no, I will not give in just yet.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you again for being here. I really appreciated this conversation.
All the gratitude is mine for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. The world is broken. That's one of the first things Andy said, and the depth of it was felt throughout our conversation. In his analogy of the guardrails, Andy illustrated that some of our traumas are those we inflict on ourselves. Some are the result of another person's behavior, and still others happen because the world is what it is, broken. No matter what trauma we've experienced in life, there are lessons to be learned. There are people to forgive, including ourselves. And there are things we need to do moving forward. As Andy shared, perspective is important when forgiving others and ourselves. If we ignore stuff or insist on hanging on to the emotion attached to the experience, we're going to have a difficult time with the forgiveness part. It may even be impossible because it's going to keep coming back. Have you ever wondered why sometimes you think you forgive someone, but it just keeps coming back up? Well, maybe, perhaps, you haven't dealt with the emotions yet. Perhaps you haven't listened to what you need to do. Which brings me to that still small voice and the fact that the world is broken. The world is that really loud voice that Andy mentioned. It will tell you, maybe even convince you of all the big, bad, negative things that are definitely going to happen if you don't listen to it. But God takes a different approach. He is patient. He is loving, kind, and compassionate. He uses that still, small voice to let you know the better choice, the better option. You know the one Andy says we may need a bit more courage to face, but it's the right one. As I mentioned in this episode, this conversation took a turn I didn't plan for or coordinate, but it took the right turn. It was two people who were having a conversation guided by that still small voice of the Holy Spirit. And I truly believe that what we discussed today was exactly what someone needs to hear. And I pray that maybe you can recognize that sometimes that still small voice comes in multiple ways. Like maybe a book, maybe Andy's book, maybe someone else's book. But sometimes that still small voice can be put into a book, and someone else's words can be the Holy Spirit's words to you. So, how will you listen to that still small voice over the world's loud, bossy voice? Something to think about this week. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.